and you don't have any information about the things there. And then the second thing, well, can I call it turf guy? And they may be using different names than the names that they used on the site. I have to be able to connect what's on the websites, what information is coming out of that, back to what I actually can buy on the market. And that, I think, is a really, that connection for turf grass really isn't there right now. I couldn't get a recommendation on what things I should be patching my lawn with than the things I can buy at Home Depot.
I just didn't know.
No, that's a very good point. We used to talk about end-of-fitted grass all the time. We'd send people out to the store and they, they couldn't find it.
But that's the same kind of dilemma that we always have, is because you try not to be partial to a particular company or brand name, you make generic recommendations. So like weed control, you can list 50 different herbicides, but the reality is when a person goes into Lowe's to buy a weed control, they're probably have one choice, the version of PCB or something. Grass varieties are sort of the same situation. There are differences in what's out there, but by and large, it's really a function of, do you want to buy premium grass seed to get the newest varieties, they cost a little more, or do you want to get the common old varieties that are the cheap cost-cutting stuff? And you can't get into all these subtleties easily and communicate with a homeowner.
I can't even, to be honest, right now at the moment, I can't even get the fact that the new varieties, the premium is the new varieties. I don't know what I get for that extra money. It's not something I can pick up on the label, because all it says is this is good for shade, this is good for high traffic. And I can get a cheap version that's good for high traffic, and get an expensive version that's good for high traffic. Am I going to end up paying more for, is it really better, the more expensive product? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. That information's hard to come by.
And if you really want to know that kind of information, that's why NTEP is so good. It's about the best non-biased information. If you want to know that kind of information, it's
And
there.
that's good for us, but our audience is the consumer, and the consumer, we've done surveys out to the wazoo, and they have no idea who Extension is. So even though Extension has the information, it's on our web, the average consumer does not know how to find us or that we're there.
That's another issue.
Well, even though Extension has all that information, our sod farms grow bluegrass sod.
Right.
So there you have it. I mean, on our research farms, we're growing new varieties of bluegrass, okay? That's not what they're growing at the sod farms.
Just a point on this, I think some of the difference in price could be comparison of the seed tag for germination rates and cleanliness. As far as the desirable varieties and their performance, pretty much bluegrass, the newer varieties all act the same way. Same with tall fescues. It's kind of a blanket statement, but if you're buying grass seed that was developed in the last 5 years, there's not a whole lot of changes. But I think the difference in price is going to be the quality of the seed.
One thing, we're getting down into what I'd say is, we've opened the book, we're in the middle of a chapter. One of the things that I'm saying, in fact, I was trying to get some information on pesticide safety, and I remember that Cornell had a real good website. The trouble is, trying to find it, because the nomenclature to get to it was extremely difficult. And I think consumers, we get so wrapped up in our own knowledge of things, we forget that John Q. Public doesn't know where to begin. And they're not going to go to NJCRESS, whatever it might be, .org. So I think the websites for public have to get outside the academic domain. And you've got to have it like, what about lawns? I don't know what it is, but
Yeah.
it's so hard for the consumer to navigate. And if they got to go 3 clicks, you've lost them. And they're going to go to, if you don't like what you see on a commercial site, but it's simple. And I think navigating through websites is the most problematic for the average person. So even if you got great information, if you can't get to it, what good is it?
Well, consumers find information by going to Google and typing in what they're looking for. If you don't have your website set up for Google to pull that information off, then you're never going to find it. So you have your web pages properly set up so Google can find them. Your homeowners will not find them.
Okay, well, let me keep going through here, because we probably won't figure that one out today. on the websites. Funding, difficulty to obtain funding, non-industry sources do exist. Mature turf, this is kind of what we were just talking about. Mature turf differs from young turf. Follow up with ramifications. Again, we talked about how a lot of the new grasses that have been developed, it might make sense for a lot of homeowners to come in and, whack the old one and put the new one in. So, is that a real responsibility of this group, though? I'm just kind of curious, or would that be more of, is that something that the commercial side, the lawn and garden stores should be doing?
Well, I think that research finding, Carl, you might, is that Carl back there? Yeah, I mean, isn't that a really important?
Well, yeah, if you're talking about the mature turf and the water quality issues, if you recall Kevin Frank's data, and also references to Porter's work back in the 1980s off of Long Island. And it seems that as organic matter starts to accumulate within a turf stand, it seems to equilibrate and maximize at a certain point. And once you reach that point, the probability of losses coming out of that system are much greater with additional inputs. So at least from the Porter data, it is a range of reaching about 10 years to 25 years within that there. So managing a mature turf is going to be much different, and often maybe under low index. If you recall Kevin's data, as that is going on years and years, even that we consider a fairly low probability management on 2 pounds of N per thousand square year, applied at 1 pound each in the spring and the fall. If you notice, particularly in dormant periods, nitrogen, contrary to what most people believe, nitrogen does leach when the ground is frozen. His data shows that, my data shows that. If you look at any of the leaching data that actually use drainage lysimeters, it's showing that. But it's going, as that organic matter is building, even under a fairly relatively low input, you are showing episodic probability risk periods with that. So the mature turf and the management of that, and that's where my work I'm trying to get across in terms of the testing of that, why that is so important. So,
And I have 2 things. One, could you put that in a sound bite?
Managing mature turf is
I
important.
mean, Joe was saying that maybe we couldn't deal with the research issues, but I think actually one of the goals
that's
of this,
supportive.
of event was to make sure that we're aware of where those controversies are, and we'll look to the scientists who were, the turf scientists and the water quality folks who are here to summarize some of those issues and send out a little note on that.
I'll give you a soundbite. In testing and scouting are the bedrock of IPM. That's where, if you're talking about IPM, whether it's on crops or anything, testing and scouting.
Scouting?
Scouting for pests, looking for pests, looking for weeds, not applying a pesticide just to apply it, just applying it prophylactically, not applying fertilizer without knowing how much is already there. Testing and scouting are where you start for IPM.
But that's great if they understand it. I can't tell you how many calls we get for crabgrass in the lawn and come out there and it's a clump of tall fescue.
Yeah.
They really, I mean, these things are all noble, but in the reality, the average consumer has a difficult time understanding what constitutes a lawn. So I think we've got to kind of keep, I like the soundbite message, we've got to be very simple. Every time we get this details, because we're subject matter experts, and we got to remember that the average person we deal with doesn't have that expertise, and they get frustrated.
Yeah, this is where, when Scott's first talked at the National IPM Conference, when we first brought Scott's in with a group of academics and environmentalists, they said, does it move? Is it an insect? Does it move? It's an insect. If it doesn't, it's a weed, right? I mean, we don't want to dumb down the message, but
You got to simplify. You don't dumb it down. You got to simplify it so they can understand.
But you also have to take it a step further because it might be moving, but it might be beneficial. And I think, when I first started in Extension, I used to always say that scouting and testing are the cornerstone of IPM, but now I say knowledge is. Because if you don't know what you're looking for, and then once you find it, if you don't know what it does, because now in IPM programs, we do apply products preventatively.